There's nothing they can do. They do not have the ability to knock Ukraine out of the war. Now they're going to continue losing 1,000 soldiers a day because they don't care about their own casualties, but I don't think that this is endless. I mean, even their manpower is not endless, and certainly their industry. Even if we don't get serious about sanctions and about cutting off their ability to ship oil, I don't know that they can go another 2 years.
Former Commanding General Ben Hodges, thank you for joining me on Times Radio. I want to begin with Joe Biden's announcement of more air defenses going to Ukraine. What do you make of this?
Well, obviously, this addresses a requirement that Ukraine has to protect innocent people, protect infrastructure from Russian missiles and rockets, glide bombs that are being used against them every day. So there's a real need, and this is important. The problem is it only addresses part of the problem. It is much more effective to kill the archer instead of trying to intercept all the arrows. So this aid package helps intercept more of the arrows, but it does nothing to kill the archer. The fact that the administration still is leaving in place this dreadful policy that Ukraine cannot attack Russian bases inside Russia with ATACMS, for example, is in effect gives Russia sanctuary to launch these attacks against Ukrainian cities. So yes, obviously I'm glad to see more Patriot and NASAMS, but it really is underwhelming.
Do you think that the US policy on Ukraine not being able to use their weapons in those areas, do you see that shifting at all?
Well, you know, of course, the spokesman, John Kirby, was asked same day, will this lead to a policy change? And he said no. So, I mean, I don't know what else it's going to take for the White House to get serious about helping Ukraine defeat Russia. And of course, within 24 hours of this attack, you've got Prime Minister Modi of India is seen in Moscow embracing Vladimir Putin. So Putin sees that we are not going to do everything that's needed. He still has his primary customer for gas, India, showing up there at Moscow. So until we get serious about helping Ukraine defeat Russia, then we're going to continue to have to deal, I say we, Ukrainians are going to continue to get pounded by Russian missiles and glide bombs.
We've also had talks that Ukraine's path to NATO in terms of membership is irreversible. Potentially allies are expected to declare this at the summit. What's the likelihood of that, do you think?
Well, unfortunately, I wish it was irreversible, but it's also seems to be not moving either. I mean, around the summit here, you hear different people saying things, doing what they can to provide some sort of a token of something to Ukraine, but none of it feels like irreversible, inevitable yet, because the United States and Germany in particular still block it. And I think this is because we, the U.S., and Germany have an excessive fear that Russia might use a nuclear weapon. That's our problem. So until we can get over that psychological excessive fear, I don't see it changing for the better, unfortunately.
If NATO cannot give Ukraine membership now, what assurances can NATO give Ukraine and potentially strike a diplomatic blow to Putin?
Well, of course, there is no guarantee other than NATO membership. That's the only security real guarantee. I mean, we had the Budapest Memorandum. That obviously was empty commitment, so I don't have any confidence that other commitments would be more substantive, at least not from the United States. I do have some confidence that there's enough countries that recognize the importance of that Ukraine cannot fail, that Ukraine needs to win. So there will be countries that will do things to help. They all recognize that Ukraine failure is a catastrophe for the rest of Europe. If Ukraine fails, millions more Ukrainian refugees will pour into Poland and Germany. Continued disruption of food and energy supplies, and tens of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers will be absorbed into Russian forces, forced into service. So you'll grow the capability of the Russian military significantly. This is a real threat for the rest of Europe. So I think European countries are waking up to this, and that if the U.S. fails, whether it's because it's a new administration or for whatever reason we don't do what needs to be done, the threat doesn't decrease, the threat goes up for the rest of Europe.
Do you think that there's a potential turning point at which it becomes too late?
Well, I mean, we failed, the collective we failed over the past 20 years, 16 years, because we did nothing after 2008 when Russia invaded Georgia. We did nothing after they jumped over President Obama's red line in Syria. We did nothing after they invaded Ukraine in 2014. And you can see why the Russians were thinking in 2021, early 2022. The U.S. was chaos with our January 6th fiasco, the terrible withdrawal from Afghanistan. Germany is still building Nord Stream 2. President Macron said NATO was brain dead. I mean, you could imagine that the Kremlin was thinking, let's go ahead and finish the job. So in this regard, it's too late. This war happened because deterrence failed, but it is never too late to get it back, for the West to realize that not only is it important for Ukraine, it's in our interest. Our economic prosperity depends on Europe's economic prosperity. That depends on stability and security. And of course, if we help Ukraine defeat Russia first as a priority, that will isolate Iran, that will isolate North Korea, and that will deter China. Because then the Chinese will see that the West has the political will, has the industrial capacity, and the military capability to help Ukraine defeat Russia. They will think twice, I think, in the Indo-Pacific region. If we fail, then I think the risk of China making a terrible decision goes up.
Looking ahead to the future, we've got the US election coming up. We're already hearing talks among Democrats about the future of Joe Biden as president. And then also we've got Donald Trump in the mix as well. How do you think, the situation that we're in the moment paints a picture for the future of the US in relation to NATO?
Well, when Mr. Trump was president last time, that was the first time in my life I had ever heard an American president question our commitment to NATO. So I think I worry, and I imagine the other 31 heads of state and government that are here at this summit are thinking, will we have more of the same if he's elected? The fact that that's even a question is a gift to the Kremlin, because the secret sauce of NATO has always been this unbreakable, unshakable, unquestionable commitment of all the nations to each other, especially the United States. So, in my view, this raises the risk of Russia or somebody else making a terrible miscalculation about whether or not we're committed. So that's why this is a big deal. This is not just, diplomatic speak, talking about the unity of the alliance. This is about deterrence. That's the most important ingredient for effective deterrence. Now, could be that if there's a President Trump again, that he will recognize, or he'll be convinced that it is in America's interest, it's in our best interest that NATO is strong, and that we help Ukraine defeat Russia, because that would deter China. So, because he's all about transactions and deals, he doesn't care for. He's demonstrated, at least in the past, he's not a fan of supranational organizations. If he could be convinced that all the things that he cares about would be enabled by a strong NATO, then I think it's not inevitable that he would try to, diminish American participation or commitment. Now, of course, our allies could take a huge step by doing what they said they would do, which is invest in their own defense. I mean, it's great that at least 23 countries now are at the 2%, have met their obligation. That means 9 haven't. It's unbelievable. And so you can imagine why a lot of people in the United States are like, what is going on here? I mean, so take that argument off the table by doing what you committed to do.
Let's talk about what's going on the ground in Ukraine. What's your current analysis of Russia's offensive? What would you say is the situation there?
Well, it's dead. I mean, there's nothing they can do. They do not have the ability to knock Ukraine out of the war. Now, they're going to continue losing 1,000 soldiers a day because they don't care about their own casualties, but I don't think that this is endless. I mean, even their manpower is not endless, and certainly their industry. Even if we don't get serious about sanctions and about cutting off their ability to ship oil, I don't know that they can go another 2 years like this, both from a labor standpoint, components that they need. And so if we got serious about the economic tools, their ability to continue doing this would be severely curtailed. So I think that Russia is doing what they can right now, waiting for us to quit, hoping that a Trump administration will make their life easier, hoping that Ukrainians will finally quit. I think that's the best they can do right now.
How long do you think it's going to take until Putin is at breaking point?
I think that depends on the people closest to him and around him. I mean, at some point, because he doesn't have to answer to the Duma, he doesn't have to answer to tough journalists asking him questions, he doesn't have to answer to the voters. He only has to answer to the people who keep him in power. So we're basically talking about the oligarchs, in the inner sanctum, if you will, of the Kremlin. When they realize there's no way that Russia's going to win, that Putin's driving them off the cliff, then I think they get rid of him. But right now, he has no reason to think that he's going to lose. The day he realizes he's going to lose, I think that's the day when this thing starts to end.
What is your current assessment of Putin's mental state at the moment?
I think I know a lot of people more qualified than me have done analysis of, what's going on there. I think he's very intelligent. I think he's evil, ruthless, does not care about anything except staying in power. So he gets the best health care of anybody in the Russian Federation.
What do you see him doing next?
If President Biden is reelected, then I think that will they'll have a different calculus maybe. Of course, they're going to continue doing what they're doing now, sabotage in our countries because they see we're not doing anything. Continue GPS jamming of airplanes and ships, continue disinformation causing us to lose trust in our own institutions. So they're at war with us right now. We need to realize that. So I think as long as he's not suffering any consequences, and he's not suffering any consequences for a single thing he's done. I mean, he doesn't get invited to the G8 anymore, but actually he's not suffering any consequences.